Giving an oral presentation is in many ways a unique opportunity. You are in front of, whether it's being a small or a very, very large audience, you always have to remember that people came to see you because they think you have something important to say. They trust that you are able to provide them some information, some inspiration that they can use to enrich their lives. So when we give oral presentations, we really have to keep that in mind, that we are there with a purpose, that we are there with a mission to deliver knowledge that is somehow going to be made meaningful to the audience, and hopefully in a way that they will remember. So we have to provide enough information for them to feel that it was worth it, but we should not overwhelm them bombard them with numbers and figures and stats and all of that so that they walk away thinking, what was all this about? And they can't remember anything. So it's a very delicate balance between really offering something they can use and not too much. And I think it's extremely important to think about that what you're trying to do is use your own interest, your own sources of inspiration, and try to deliver your passions in a way and sort of package that knowledge you have in a way that can inspire people so that they walk away with something important. And as part of preparing your presentations, your oral presentations, I already in the previous lecture talked a little bit about what you're going to be doing before you come to the live classes. But let me just sort of highlight the main topics that you have to prepare before you come to class. So you have to, as I described, you have to search the primary literature, and you have to find an article, a primary literature article that you think is very suitable for an oral presentation and also for the individual essays that you will be writing. And it has to be peer reviewed, and it has to have results. After you've chosen your article, you have to then prepare a short summary of the article, not in writing necessarily, but so that when you meet with your group, you can explain what this article is about. So your summary is really your opportunity to convey to your group members, what is this article about? Why did you find it interesting? What did they do that you think is relevant? Maybe include some of your own experiences, or you can relate it to something you have experienced yourself. In other ways, try to explain why you chose this article. And in particular, think of preparing an argument for why you think this is particularly suitable, whether it has to do with the type of data they were collecting, the innovation in how the results were portrayed, whether it's a fascinating new discovery, whether it's done in California or in some way relevant to you as young students in the beginning of your career. In other ways, try to find a hook, some sort of common denominator or something that you think makes this article particularly relevant and suitable and inspiring to your peers. And you should also, while you're still before you come to the live classes, you should think about, okay, if we end up choosing my paper, what could be the components that we would put into our presentation? What would be the topics that we should be covering? How could we turn this article into a narrative, a story that has multiple chapters? What should those chapters be? What should be their sequence? How can we make this, if this is about horses or camels or sea otters or whatever, how can we maybe make a connection between this article and something of broader relevance, so that it becomes not just a study with specific data from a specific location, but something that has broader relevance. And so then you come to, and before you come to class also, you should definitely look into who are your group members. And we will, in this tab here called people, that's where we will assign you to groups. So when you go in there, you can have a look at who are your group members, and you will, those groups will be assigned a unique number, so that you will be in group 7 or group 12 or whatever your group number is. So find yourself in each of these groups, so that you know with whom you're supposed to meet in your group. And those groups will be assigned your own virtual classrooms, where you will then be discussing live your articles and how you're going to make your oral presentation. So then we move on to the live classes. So now it's 10:30, and you're signing in, and you're being assigned to your classroom, and then you will then each of the group members will then introduce and explain why they picked this particular article, and this is a wonderful opportunity for you to not only present your own study, but also hear what other people decided to choose. And we have over the years doing this, we've found out how much students really appreciate this, and how much they learn from students picking completely different topics, and therefore hearing their peers describe this research that they'd never heard of. So this is really a golden opportunity for you to be exposed to research and inspired about types of research that you had never thought of. So really make sure you yourself give a great presentation, and listen and ask questions when other group members make their presentations. And you will then have a discussion about why you will select a particular article, and then you decide that, okay, so Thomas or Jerry or Sarah or whoever article is the one that we will choose for our oral presentation. Great. So now you know which one you're going to move forward with, and then you have and you also have thought of what the flows, what the logic should be of your presentation. So you then move into the next phase, which is, okay, we have our paper. How are we then going to package this into an intriguing, innovative narrative? So you basically, still in the live class, you develop a script, or whatever you want to call it, a narrative, a sort of a sequence of topics, so that you have something that you can then afterwards assign to different group members. So this person will do the first slides, and then the next person will do the next ones, and then the third person will do the last slides. So you have an idea of who's going to be doing what. You can also, depending on how much time you have, how efficient you are with this, you could talk about which color theme, which font theme, background, all this, so that when you prepare your slides, you're being uniform in setting up the slides. So that makes it much easier to edit afterwards. But this is also something you can do later on, after you have experimented a little bit. And you then assign group members to the different parts, so that each of you walk away from that live session with a clear idea of who's going to be doing what. And you should, of course, exchange contact information, email, phone numbers, or depending on where you are in the world, find out and maybe your work schedule and whatnot, so that you set up time where you can discuss later on outside class, when show each other the slides that you have prepared. Maybe you have some questions, so you want to decide, so you find some new information. Oh, so you have a narrative, but now you really think this other aspect should be included. So what can we take out to make space for these other slides? So make sure you have, it's a process that will take a considerable amount of coordination amongst you, and this is another aspect of this that we are expecting you to manage yourselves. This is not something we manage. This is something you do outside the classroom. It's part of your homework, is to make this happen. Your assignment is to, by the dates, the deadlines that are available on Canvas, you know that you have to upload a presentation at a certain date, and it's up to you to make that happen. How often you meet, all of that stuff, how you're going to prepare the slides, exactly how you're going to prepare the slides, all that is completely up to you. We trust that you can, you need to learn to trust yourself and your own judgment. Having said that, if you have some questions and we are still several days from the deadline, we have no problem with you reaching out to either Jason or myself or to Javier and say, hey, we have this idea. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? No problem. But of course, if you email us the night before, or say 36 hours before, it means that you are not taking this particularly seriously. You should have had that conversation, and you should have sort of identified those issues much earlier. And if you're not being serious about it, then it's hard for us to justify that we should be it too. So really make sure that you get started on this and you get established good collaboration, good communication with your group members. That is a big part of this assignment, is to make it happen. Find out how you can work together as a team. And also, maybe one of you has some specific skills. Maybe somebody has some software editing skills, or maybe somebody knows how to draw very well, so you can make your own drawings. These are ways you can beef up and really improve your standard presentation. So communication is really, really important. And so you keep that communication going, and you end up after all this exchange and maybe some Zoom you meetings, and we'll talk about Zoom here in a second. You will then come up with a final set of slides that you say, okay, these are the slides that we're going to end up using for our presentation. So that's then. So what you then need to do is get into the part of this which is somewhat different from what we've done in the past, which is you have to record these your own part. So the slides that you cannot be in the same room for obvious reasons, but suppose you have 15 slides and there are 3 team members. We would expect that each of the 3 team members narrate 5 slides. So you have to do that individually, and we will show you how to get to that. But before I do that, I should just point out that we are expecting that students contribute equally. This is a team effort. So again, if you are 3 members or 4 members, we want either 33 or 25% of the time and slides assigned to each of the group members. We cannot have one group member talk for 2/3 of the time and the other 2 for just a few minutes. That's a definite no. This is going to be a team effort. Because of time, we are recommending, based on our experience, that you produce somewhere between 15 and 20 slides, and these would be the typical topics that you, or sort of segments that you could include. This could be sort of your skeleton or your narrative if you want. So you have a title slide, and you have talk a little bit about yourself, maybe why you chose this particular article. You can illustrate or either take from the paper itself or generate it yourself some visual effects that demonstrate the hypothesis that was tested. And you can talk about sort of the background of this particular study. This was done in a particular part of the world. This was done with certain monkeys or some other aspects. So give people some context. Then you can go into the main findings and then broaden it out towards the end. So why should I, as a viewer or an audience of this, why should I care? What are the take-home messages? You can see here, I have deliberately not included methods as something as a particular segment here, and that's because we really don't think that the methods themselves typically lend themselves very well to most oral presentations. These are kind of the nuts and bolts of how many samples were taken or how long. So these ants were observed for 22 minutes and there were 17 females and 289 males, and they had mated so many times, or all of these details are sort of distracting from the key message. Having said that, if your presentation is about innovative methods, or in some way that the methods are important to your study, then we obviously suggest that you include them into your narrative, but for most studies, the example, the data are used to talk about something of a broader relevance. Some has to do with sort of how animals are being affected by climate change, or how urban development is affecting something about relationship between humans and animals, or something about particular types of treatment of animals, or their behavior, their cognitive capabilities, or something. So you use the example to talk about something of broader relevance. So that's why we expect a lot of your presentations to have a lot of information down here of what are the take-home messages, and why does this particular study on camels or cichlids or something also have relevance to people who are working on completely different animals. There are in the syllabus quite detailed instructions for you about this assignment. So we really encourage you to if you have not already done so, go to the syllabus and make sure that you read what we are providing there. So let's move into the sort of general suggestions that we wish to convey to you, and these are based on our many years of doing this kind of work, giving presentations, what we think. So these are not strict rules or something you have to do, but these are suggestions for you to consider. We really mean that. And I started out by saying that an oral presentation is an opportunity to influence an audience, to convey something inspiring, right? So I think it's extremely important to always keep in mind that your audience, whoever that might be, deserve your respect. They could have been somewhere else. They could be doing something. They decided to come to this particular place where you were talking. So you have to deliver something to them. So the focus should not be on you. The focus should be on them. And the real question, in my view, is what do you know? What sort of knowledge do you have that could potentially be of value to them? And that's really the question you should be asking yourself when you're putting together your presentation. And as you saw in my intro to this lecture, I decided to dress up a little bit. And I say that I'm not saying that you have to wear a wedding dress or a tuxedo or something. I'm not saying anything in particular. But I am saying this, and that is, I really mean this, that you, with your posture and with your dress code, you are already signaling a lot to the audience. The split second you walk through the door into the room you are, or if you are on a video, the way you are presenting yourself, you are already sending signals about how much respect, how serious you are about this. Just like going to a job interview, if you show up and you haven't showered and you haven't put on a decent shirt or something sort of pleasant and conveying some level of decency and respect, you are already putting yourself in a difficult position. So you can, in a very simple way, by simply picking whatever clothes that makes you comfortable and that you think reflects who you are, you can do a lot. So I really encourage you to think about that, just like when you're going to a job interview. And this is, of course, very different. This is mainly for when you are giving to a live audience. You shouldn't be reading from a paper. even though, so this is about practicing, because this is again about respect. You should know what you want to say. You need to rehearse enough so that you are comfortable enough with what you're going to be saying. If you are looking down at a paper or onto a tablet or whatnot, you're basically losing eye contact, and there's important dialogue and communication with your audience that is being lost. So you should refrain from that, because this eye contact is really important. This is where you pick up signals. You understand if they're falling asleep, if they're getting it, if you're making a joke or saying something. Are they getting it? Are they understanding it? Do they, or not? So keeping an eye on your audience is really, really important. And you may sort of early on, sort of as an icebreaker, you may bring in sort of, depending on, of course, how much time you have and the topic, but there may be an opportunity to establish some dialogue with simply bringing in, talk about, sort of just mention an icebreaker, a little anecdote of some sort that sort of can minimize the distance between you and the audience and get them sort of involved a little bit. So that may be a good thing. And also, especially if you are talking for, say, 30 minutes or more than that for that matter, if you can include a few questions along the way, this is a way to keep the audience connected. It breaks up the monotony, and it's also a wonderful way of finding out, are they getting the main points. So you can really early on, by asking a few questions, you can figure out what is their knowledge level, and therefore do you need to make some adjustments, because in 3 or 4 slides I'm going to talk about something, and you can sort of, you may be worried this may be a little bit too complicated, so how am I going to package this? How much detail do I need to provide? If you get the feeling that they understand all of this, well, then you can just move on. But otherwise you may have to slow down a little bit and maybe include some additional information. So questions along the way can help you fine tune what level, how you effectively communicate what you're trying to say. You definitely don't want to speak too fast, and you don't want to speak too slow either. So find a rhythm that is comfortable for you and be articulate. If there's a microphone, make sure you don't walk too far away from the microphone. Make sure that they can hear in the back. Just make sure that you are articulate and everybody can hear what you're saying. Very, very important. And also, when you set up, before you even start your presentation, maybe you have to draw some curtains or something. If there's some glare or some shadows on the screen, make sure that the screen comes across as so it's easy to see. There's nothing in the way, that the things are set up. So coming early, if you're giving a presentation to a Rotary Club or a church group or at a conference or something, go to the room itself, have a look at it, make sure that the sound is working, and talk to the organizers if you think that there's a sun coming in from one direction and it's sort of glaring the screen in one part. So have that taken care of. One slide. Well, maybe you can see here's a lot of stuff. Here's a lot of text. Text is typically not a good thing, but one way to minimize the negative effect of having a lot of text on a slide is by using animations, right? So that's what I'm here. So you can also do that. I will say these slides have a different purpose because they're used for lectures, and these are part of your notes. So if I were giving an oral presentation like you are going to be doing, I would have much less text than I do here, but I need to give you something to read. So that's why these particular slides have more text than I would typically do in an oral presentation. Make sure that when you present something, that you have the caps, the labels, the captions, the scale bars, when you have all that, and use big enough font so that you can see it. And if you are pointing in particular reason, or there's some trend going in bottom, towards the bottom or to right, the top left corner, use arrows to visualize this. Really use the aids at your disposal to make it easy for the audience to understand and interpret your slides. Very little text. And again, keep it simple and try to animate, okay? And you should be using throughout your slides, even with the 3 parts or 4 parts prepared by different people, use the same font, use the same size. All should be bold or not bold, same color, so that there's a seamless sort of transition from one part to the other. We want that. We want to see how it's rehearsed, how it's connected, so that we understand that you did this as a group, and that you rehearsed this and coordinated this very well. The animations, we've talked about this. Definitely use the graphics and use the size of text. Make sure that they are as that you can read them even from. This is particularly when you do live presentations, that graphs should be big enough and the font should be big enough. The symbols should be big enough. The explanation of the symbols, the legends, should be big enough so you can read them from the back of the room, right? So, and use the entire slide. You can see, I actually over here on this particular slide, I have a lot of real estate over here that I'm not using. If I were to do something here, I would probably find some visuals, a photo or something to put in here, right? To take advantage of the full slide. Use it. And use it in a way, so you shouldn't clutter your slides with lots of unnecessary junk. This is something I see a lot, and I really want to emphasize is, if it's on the slides, it's important. If it's important, you talk about it. So if it's there, make sure you mention it in the presentation. Don't have something on there that you're not talking about. Don't have a graph that you never mention. Don't have a map or a photo that never gets mentioned when in your talking. That doesn't make any sense. The 2 things need to complement each other. And this is particularly, I mean, this is all going to be recorded in this particular session, so this is only relevant for when you give live presentations. You can embed videos, you can access the internet, you can do all sorts of things. You can make some interactive polling, you can do whatever, bring a banjo and play a song or something, but all those are potentially wonderful elements in your presentation, but also remember that they are associated with some risk of technical problems, right? So you may not have the internet connection you thought you had. The format of the screen may be slightly different. The colors may actually show up in a slightly different way than you thought. So testing it out the day before, or have somebody test it on the computer you're going to be using, is a very good idea, just to make sure that everything works, that the animations you're making are working, all that kind of stuff. So, and videos, if the presentation is saved on a different computer, maybe something got lost there, so suddenly you're expecting to show a video and then there's no video, the link is not working, right? So make it simple. Really try to minimize those technical issues, unless you are very, very good at sort of coming up with alternative plans on the spot, improvise on the spot. Humor is something I think is very, very powerful, and something that is somewhat underestimated in the scientific world. I think it can be very, you can have a cartoon, you can make a little anecdote, you can make a little comment here and there. Just make sure, of course, that it's respectful and not go over the top here. It shouldn't be cheesy, but I definitely think that humor has a place in science. So this is something you can definitely consider including. And have that smooth transition between group members, and towards the end, why is this important? Just because you were absolutely fascinated with okapis or salamanders doesn't mean that the rest of the world walk around with the same passion. So what is it about this that you think is so unique, and for other people who maybe have other interests, why do you have some information about salamanders or okapis that is relevant for them? It is about them. It is about how your interests can be of value to the audience. That is, as I already mentioned, super, super important. So that they know, that it's very clear from them. If you ask them afterwards, what was it that you learned from this? They should be able to repeat what you thought of were the key take-home messages. If they walk away like thinking, what on earth was this all about? Then you've missed a golden opportunity to deliver something important to them, right? So really make it clear. Maybe have a slide that's literally called take-home messages from this presentation, like I suggested in the template. So now we're gonna go. So these were some suggestions to consider, and here are some suggestions not to consider. Right? This is a graph that's taken out of a paper, and I can just imagine somebody putting that onto their oral presentation. And think about for a little bit what's wrong here. Why does this particular figure not lend itself very well to an oral presentation? Think about that for a second. And of course, if I saw this, I would almost fall back in my chair and think, whoa, what am I supposed to look at here? There are so many symbols, there's so many numbers, there's so many names and even abbreviated Latin names, and then there are these columns and colors, and then there's the groups, and then there's the phylogeny between them. It's like, gee, okay, where am I supposed to look here? How and if I had to even try to focus on something of this, there would be no way I could be listening to the person talking. So here we have a perfect example of something that we shouldn't do, and something that would make it impossible for me to listen to the person and also think of this as complementing what the person is saying. Here there would be a direct attention competition between what the person is saying and what the person what this graph is saying. This is very useful in a and it's actually it's a very, very good graph, or figure, but it's meant for a for a written article where you can sit with a cup of coffee or tea or something, and you can read this, and you can sort of go back and forth between the figure itself and the text to understand what this is all about. And I just want to list a few comments that you hear occasionally that I really find somewhat disrespectful, and I would really encourage you never to use, right? So, well, I know this is a busy slide, but, well, if you know it's a busy slide, why did you prepare it? Why didn't you make it simple? Again, you should respect your audience. You shouldn't give me a slide that you even acknowledge is busy. Then you should have taken the time to make it simple, right? Oh, yeah, and so I only started working on this last night, and then I had a couple of beers with my friends, and then it got late, and you hear these things, and all these sentences, what they're communicating is the presenter didn't really understand what he or she is supposed to do, and her or his role, and why you need to respect your audience. You should be preparing yourself. We don't care what you were doing last night. That has no interest to me. What is interesting for me is, what do you have to tell me that I can get inspired by? I've never given this presentation before is another one. So it's like, so you were given some slides by somebody else, and you just pulled it out from your drive, and now you're sort of winging it right here. That's very unprofessional. That's not how we do things. That's not how we sort of, if we're showing up, we're dressed nicely, we have a nice posture, confident posture, we are talking with an articulate and convincing voice, we can deliver this. So even if you were given this, and even if you hadn't given this before, you figure out a way to rehearse this enough so that you can make it look like it were your presentation. Even if you were only given these slides yesterday, that for me as an audience, I don't care when you started work on this. You deliver me something I can use. Otherwise, you're wasting my time. They did something that was very unfortunate here. They also did something very cleverly in their conclusion, where this allows them to talk a lot. This presentation really complements a lot also what is said to the left, but really something you could almost get rid of all of this, because this illustration here, in my view, clearly articulates, it just says, it's very, very illustrative of what is going on, what was this paper about. So here's another presentation, and you can see here there's a lot of text, that there's no animation here, and I don't even know how. I mean, you can just, even that last sentence. I mean, identifying rabies variants and what species are carrying with specific variants will allow for timely public and animal health. I'm running out of breath. I mean, this should be, if they want to use text, they should make it a lot shorter. It should just be sort of key words, and preferably instead of this, there should be some pictures of rabies virus. There should be something about mammals. There should be, so they got the skunks, the raccoons, foxes. You don't write names here. You should show the picture, show the animals, right? Use the visuals, use the canvas here, the PowerPoint slide, in a visual way. You don't need to write it down. This is almost like a novel. This is all in United States of States is should be capitalized. So it's just, this was not prepared well, right? But then we came to the methods, and the same group, look what they did. So here they simplified the methods very clearly, and here you can see that here's a way to clearly, they have simplified it, and I can imagine that the presentation was clearly, they can sort of go from one step to the next, that there's a logic flow, and then there were these two studies that were done separately and whatnot. So here they simplified things and did it. So this is much better. Now I just see, so virus characterization. So the second word is capitalized. Down here they didn't do it. Over here, so there's some inconsistencies in how they wrote. These are small details that are all about respect for your audience. Pay attention to how you prepare your slides. Don't bother me with these small details. This is something you need to learn to pick up, so that it's all uniform, it looks professional. And the same paper here, right? So here you have something where you can see there's some, so they're explaining a relationship between these bats and how they are potentially spreading rabies, and how this is all connected. So here they are sort of visualizing in a way how one animal is affecting another and how rabies is fitting into this. So clearly here they're using the canvas in an effective way. Here's an example of from a completely different study, but you can see a whole bunch of problems here, right? So if you're in the back of the room, we won't be able to read any of this stuff. The symbols are so small that we can barely see them. Some of the colors are very simple, very similar. If you're colorblind, you may not be able to see the differences. Here, this we can't read in the back. So, but if you have something like this, you cannot just copy it from the paper itself and put it into the presentation. You have to redo them yourself. So you can basically make a screenshot just like they did here, but then you change the labels, or in other ways make it so that it's readable from a distance, or you get rid of it altogether, and in a different way with arrows going up and down, or some sizes of shapes and other things. You show the trend in the data, but in a more effective way. This is not just copying and pasting screenshots like this is not work. Here's an example of materials and methods where you can see they included a lot of numbers here. So these particular rhinos, they were trained for 2 months, and then there were 6 weeks of observations, and then 1 week with the feeder, and blah 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 blah. All these numbers, nobody will remember this at the end of the presentation. Was it 6 weeks, or was it 5 weeks, or was it 12 weeks? Nobody really cares, right? That's not the point here. We don't need to know that it was 20 minutes or 27 minutes. That's not the point. So give us the information. This is unnecessary information for most presentations, unless there was some specific things going on in those 6 weeks that then later on became really important for the main messages. If this is not important for your overall messages, leave this out. You can just at least simplify it drastically, because the perfect way to sort of kill your audience is by just throwing numbers at them. And weights of different chemicals that were used, and how many treatments, and how many times it was repeated, and we did it at this longitude and this latitude, and we did it at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then we did it at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then we have four females and six males, and this is just, people lose interest if you bombard them with numbers like that. So turn this into some simplified illustrations or summary. This is far too much information. The same presentation ended up, and it was actually full of some beautiful animations. So this was about dogs and their cognitive skills, and they ended up here. So you can imagine how this was part of their conclusion. So here they really went sort of in the extreme opposite and came up with something. There's not a single word, but you can imagine how this could be used in a both sort of humoristic and an informative way as part of a presentation. So this particular part of their presentation, I thought was really well done.
This completes sort of the part of the lecture where I've given you hopefully some useful information about how you can prepare your slides, how you can work together as a group, how you can use other resources that are available out there, how you can really take advantage of all the presentations that are on YouTube, TED Talk, and other places, and use them not only to learn more about specific topics, but in particular to learn about how to put together a convincing and effective presentation. What we're going to move into now is talk more about, okay, so now you have your presentation. You have as a group, you have developed your slides, so you know the material, then you have organized them in the right sequence, so you know what all the content of your presentation. You have made sure that they follow a uniform pattern, that they all use the same font, size, the same colors, so that we don't, as an audience, we can't see who prepared which slides. It shouldn't be sort of 1/3 being prepared in blue and one in green and one in red. Then it's sort of obvious that these were put together in very different ways. And if some try to make it as uniform as possible, as cohesive as possible, so it comes across as something that was put together by a team, that it is as a you meaning in plural, that you are together. It's not three individual parts that are sort of put together in some order. You have made a plan about who are the people, who is the individual going to be talking about each of the slides. So that has been taken care of. You have rehearsed individually, and you have hopefully also met as a group a couple of times and seen how other group members present what they're going to be talking about, so that you can potentially cross-reference from one slide to another and talk. So you can say, when it's your turn, you can say, as Teresa mentioned earlier in the presentation, because you know what she talked about. That becomes very effective to sort of tie different parts of the presentation together by making cross references. It makes it look very dynamic and very, very professional. You have to remember that group members have to contribute equally, meaning it's not that we are sort of looking at it down to the millisecond or second, but if we have an 18-minute presentation and 12 minutes is by one group member and 6 minutes are divided by the other two, that's not right. That's where we start sort of having issues with it. So you need to make sure when you outsource and outdelegate who's going to be talking about what. And because people have different styles, some people talk more than others, some group members need a little bit of help. You need to make sure that it comes across as a very even as possible distribution of speaking time between the group members. Very, very important. And that is part of the process here. You also learn as a group not only to present, but also to coach team members and help the audience understand that you work together as a team. So then when you have done all that, you are then ready to meet in on Zoom. And we do understand that there are other platforms. We're just suggesting Zoom because it's available to you, because a lot of you have a lot of experience already from other lectures, other courses working in Zoom. So we just think that is the best platform. But there are certainly others. You are perfectly welcome to use other platforms, if that works better for you. We then suggest that you have compiled all your slides together in one file, and that one group member is in charge of running the computer and share with everybody, so that you have your files there. And then because you meet, you shouldn't be recording individually. You should be all attending this Zoom meeting, and the Zoom meeting then you record that session, and that becomes your oral presentation. And so once you're all there and you have your slides shared, everybody can see them, and sound and video is working on everybody's computer, you can then move to slideshow, slide view mode, and you can begin your presentation. And you may have to repeat this a couple of times just because people are sort of stumbling a little bit, but that's just the way it is. And then as you start your presentation, one group member records the meeting onto a personal computer, not the cloud, so that once the meeting is over, it will trigger Zoom to start saving that file and put it onto the computer. So you want to make sure that the group member who does this has enough memory on the computer. It could be sort of 300-400 megabyte give and take. Maybe, well, it depends, but it could be quite a bit of memory. So make sure that the person who is in charge of running the sort of the IT department of your presentation has the space on the computer that is going to be used. Okay. And I would strongly encourage that you make a couple of dry runs, that you try this out a couple of times beforehand. Just even without really having any slides, but just try it out. Make sure that it works, so that once you're actually doing your oral presentation, you don't have to worry about the technical aspects of it. It's all going to flow. You're going to be ready to go, right? So this is a great way of doing it. You can record individually, but as I said, I really think it flows much better if you are all meeting and recording it as one file, and it makes it much easier for you afterwards to compile. That you don't need to compile, stitch files together or anything. So that's why we strongly encourage you to follow this particular protocol of recording your oral presentation. This slide, this screenshot just shows you here what happens once you hit that. After you've finished your presentation, your oral presentation, you end the meeting, and it will immediately start converting the meeting and sort of render the meeting recording, and that will then ultimately end up in a folder somewhere on your computer, and that is the one that you will then be using as your oral presentation. Just to sort of summarize here, right? So it comes into a folder somewhere. It may already be Zoom may already have a folder on your computer that it automatically fits them into, or it may ask you to select a folder where you want that file to go into. But as part of you preparing your presentation, I also want you to think about the background, because you are going to be streaming. So make sure that it looks somewhat representable behind you when you're streaming yourself, right? You want to think about background noise. I can, for example, mention that a couple of times I've been recording lectures, and then suddenly the garage door underneath opens and it sounds like there's a earthquake, or there's a dumpster truck outside, or somebody starts a leaf blower or something in the middle of things. So you don't want that to distract from your otherwise professional presentation. You also want to think about lighting, so play with that a little bit. These are the kind of things that you want to that can happen and that can be improved. These are things under your control. So make sure you make that it looks as good as you possibly want it, and therefore look at other videos and prepare way ahead of time, so that this doesn't become a last minute issue that's going to stress you out. For each round of oral presentations that you will be doing in groups, you're obviously going to be with different teams, different peers each time, but there will be unique group numbers for all of the groups. So suppose one of the groups is number 5. Well, then group number 5 needs to upload its presentation, and we're using YouTube as the platform to do this. And I'll show you here in the next couple in a little bit how to actually do that. We want you to follow a particular format when you upload your oral presentation. So, for instance, if the deadline of the oral presentation is January 24th and you are in group number 5, we want you to use the name ABI50B, all capital, and then the month and the date, and then the group number. And then once you have uploaded the file to YouTube, you will then YouTube will generate a URL, and that's that's a link to the video, and that is what one of the group members from each group will be submitting via Canvas. So let's have a look at how you actually upload your YouTube video of the oral presentation. Once you have your group presentation all finished up and you're happy with it in Zoom, and it's downloaded on one of the group members' computer, you go to YouTube, and I'll just walk you through how that would take place. So you have to upload it here. So I would go to YouTube, enter here, and you can see I already have an account. So it's already recognizing me here. You would have to get into this YouTube and then get into the studio, which is where you have your library. Maybe you've already made your videos, but you get into that. And you can then create the video simply uploading it simply by creating this create button over here. You can see I have all sorts of lectures already created. So I upload my video. I'm going to then select the file that I'm going to be uploading. I am going to go with just a small one, so I'll just take this one as a. So whatever file you wanna upload. Oops, that doesn't work. We'll take another one. We'll take this one. Then it will start uploading here. Then I have to giving it a title. So that would be, for instance, ABI 50B. January 24th, which is the deadline, and this would be group 5, for instance. And this is the link that you ultimately want to use and then upload into assignment. This is the unique URL that links us. So, and you will click the button that this is not made for kids. You will then also You don't need to do anything here. You will do it as unlisted. Okay, so this, don't click the private, don't click the public, just click the unlisted here. And then after this, it will actually start. And you can see down here, you can see here that it's now starting to upload. So once it's done, it will be available on YouTube, and you can then post that link, that URL, copy that and put that into to the groups, to the assignment via Canvas, and you have then completed your assignment. And those are the links that we will then be sharing with peers, so that they can access your video and do reviews of them. This completes your submission of your oral presentation. Now we're gonna flip it around, because you as a student are also gonna be reviewing the presentations of other groups, and you are gonna both grade them and also provide written comments, feedback onto these presentations. And we do this with two very important purposes in mind. One is for you to see other presentations, and therefore see how other groups handled the same task, and hopefully learn something from that. And secondly, we also want you to become familiar with this responsibility of having to grade other people's work. This is something you will be doing in the future. You will be getting a degree from UC Davis, and therefore be some sort of decision maker. You will have responsibilities in the future. You'll be managing other people. You'll be judging their performance. So as uncomfortable this may be, this is something that is very likely going to be part of your job anyway. So we want to prepare you a little bit for that in the future. So we have, and this is spelled out in more detail in the syllabus, and that is another reason why you really need to read the syllabus very, very carefully. You need to first give a grade, and the maximum, the grade is composed of 5 categories. So you have to give a grade from 1 to 10 regarding each of these 5 basic questions. So were the slides nice, elegant? Were they well prepared? Was this a professionally looking presentation based on the slides themselves? Did the team members contribute equally? So here you go. You can see if we have a presentation where one is dominating, that group is going to get a lower grade in that category. How clear were the main points? How effective was the whole presentation? Can you, when you afterwards think back of the presentation, can you clearly sort of articulate in your head, what was this about? Were the main points relevant to a broader audience? So were the group members able to sort of put this in a context that we can all think of as relevant, as important, or a large group of us think of? And was there a good synergy between what they were saying and what they were showing on the slides? Or the problem here is that in some cases people are basically just repeating what is on their slide, which means that the person speaking was not really necessary. And that's why you don't want a lot of text on the slides, because you want the person to be talking and synergizing what is being visualized, being illustrated on the slides. So if the group does an excellent job in all of these 5 categories, the end grade will of course be 50 points. That's what you will give this group. If they could do better, you will deduct points here. And think of this as also in the process of preparing your slides and your presentation. Think of this as these are the criteria that will be used to grade your presentation. So you want to make sure that you check these boxes. You want to make sure that in your judgment, your presentation does the best it possibly can to address these 5 selection criteria. And then and you will, as students, you will be grading these, and we as instructors will also grade this. So there's going to be 2 sets of grading here. And then the exact same thing regarding regarding feedback. There will be an assignment for you to upload some feedback where you have to then in sort of using your own words and talking in a constructive manner, you and in a respectful manner, you have to provide some feedback on the presentations and say what did they did well, what could they have done a little bit better in each of these categories. And then we as instructors will look at the feedback you gave and then grade that. In other words, it is not, and this feedback, by the way, will be given back to the groups that prepared the presentation. But the grade here is now on your ability to constructively and respectfully evaluate a presentation and give constructive feedback. So you as the reviewer are being reviewed by us. So so you need to put a lot of effort into making sure that you have understood the presentation and you have given some examples and given them some constructive feedback that the groups can then use to improve their presentations.
So I hope you can see from this lecture that we take oral presentations very, very seriously. We really think that this is a very important part of this course, and that's why we're doing it twice. And we want you to learn how to work together as a group, because that's also something that you typically do. You have to, in the future you have to convey a message or a couple of messages. You have to present a topic of some sort, and you have to convey it in a convincing way. Now we have added, of course, the recording here, which is we are forced to, but we really hope that this will allow you to learn some technologies that you can also use in the future. And finally, I want to say absolutely paramount that you open the syllabus, that you read them carefully, you understand how you have to create these oral presentations, how you have to produce the oral presentations, all the different aspects that are involved here, because there are lots of sort of moving parts, there are lots of parts going into this. So it's important that you meet the deadlines, it's important that you understand how to use Zoom, that you get started early on selecting your research article, that you learn how to communicate with your group, that you think about how to structure your slides and come up with a beautiful theme, and how you're going to transition from one team member to the other. Lots of details here, and that's part of the exercise. It's not just the presentation itself. We know that we are adding a lot of sort of nuts and bolts to this, lots of sort of technical or aspects to it, but that's what life is really about. It's about solving those problems that come with that, and academia is a lot about that, not just learning and analyzing data, but also conveying it and the mechanics of doing that. So really take this opportunity seriously, and hopefully you will walk away from this as a much more confident speaker, as somebody who understands much more about what it means to be working in a group and what it takes to put together an effective presentation. So you go for a job interview, they've just hired you and they say, hey, we have this business plan that we need to present to these donors or these investors, or you work in a lab and you need to present some data. You would know exactly how to handle this, because now you have sort of a plan of attack. You would know the steps that are needed. So this is what we're hoping you get out of this.